All right. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the Dad Bod Brigade podcast. My name is Dylan. And we have another special guest with us here today, Mr. Anthony Franzese. Welcome to the show. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. It's really good to have you here. So Anthony is the host of the podcast called Successful Working Parents, in which he and his guests discuss kind of the intersection of work life, family life, personal development. You launched it last May, correct?
Yeah.
And you guys are releasing episodes every single week, which is fantastic. That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I've come to realize over time.
How did you give me like a background on like how you got started in that? What led you to want to get into that? And then we can kind of just talk about that and as well as your experiences. And I know you guys have a just under one baby girl as well, correct?
Yeah. It's all kind of related. So had our first child last July. So she's 7. I guess we're still in the half months, I guess. So she's like 7.5 months now.
Yeah.
And I work in sales for a fertility company called Stork Club that provides fertility to employees. And so I thought that it'd be really great to start putting out more content, both like for my own personal brand and also for the company as well. And I thought a podcast would be a fun way to do it. So as I was becoming a father, it was really great to meet every week with different parents to hear a little bit more about them and how they just figured out how to balance work and family life and just some of the secrets to their success. And so, yeah, we've been interviewing parents every week. I've been just kind of doing it on my own on the side after work and before work and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of effort, especially when you start when you're a little bit of a perfectionist. I clean up the audio and stuff like that to try to clean up some of my own ums and ahs and whatnot. But it's been really great.
Yeah.
So everything's sort of coming together as far as like the synergy of what I'm doing for work and what I'm doing on the side and my family.
That's awesome. I mean, it's a lot more work too. And I don't know if you've had a background in like audio, video or production or anything like that, but I have somewhat of a background in that. And it was still like a massive learning curve for me. I had a buddy that started a podcast and I saw him putting out his episodes and I was like, man, that's really cool. Like I've always wanted to do that. Like teach me. And then, I kind of went off on my own and started just breaking through walls, trying to figure it out at the same time. So did you have any kind of background in that before, or you just got like right into podcasting and just kind of learn as you went?
I really had no background. I had edited some iMovie videos in high school. So I had a basic idea of like how to like cut and snip and do things like that. But no, I just kind of dove in.
That's awesome. So what made you want to focus? I guess because, having a daughter, having a kid will kind of change a lot about your life in more than, the very overt ways that having a kid will change your life. But in terms of like your work-life balance and what you've learned from some of the guests and everything like that, how are you kind of changing what you do or kind of taking what you've learned from the show and the guests that you've had on? Because we have 2 kids now, an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I still feel like I am trying to figure out this work life, family life, personal balance life thing as we go 8 years into it.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why it's been helpful to talk to so many parents is because most people will admit they really are still trying to figure it out themselves. So it made me feel like less like I had to have it all worked out. I think that's just giving yourself a break. I've always been like kind of a type A person. And so to just like let go of some of that high standard going into things has been helpful. I read a lot more books while my wife was pregnant, and kind of before the podcast and before I actually became a father. And then some of the advice also was like, you have to kind of just do it. There's only so much research you could do. And I think that's been really true. I don't know how much of the books will really helped me in hindsight as much as you just sort of learn on the job and
figure it out
better than I do, right? Every kid is different as well. So I think there's only so much prep you can really do. So that's been really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's like what we were talking about before too. Like my son is 8. And so when he was born, I was still in the Army and I deployed about a month after he was born and didn't come home till he was almost walking. And so that whole baby phase I missed. And so I really didn't know a whole lot about that phase of life. Obviously, I got to talk to my wife in FaceTime and stuff with them while I was deployed, but I wasn't in the trenches with her, kind of dealing with the stuff that she was dealing with. And he was an awful baby. He was sick. he was colicky. He slept like crap. He ate like crap. It was a nightmare for her to deal with on her own. But then our daughter came around, and about 2 months in, I was back to basically like new dad again, because I had no clue what to do. The whole baby phase was all new to me again. But there was just something different in the dichotomy, or the whatever it is, the dynamic of raising a son and then a daughter. It totally just wrecked my world. She is complete, like, wrapped around my finger, and she knows it. she uses it to her advantage. Yours is still kind of like infant phase, because you haven't really gotten there yet. But it's, again, like, you don't know until you know, and you're never really prepared for what kids bring to your life and how they change it, right?
Yeah, I mean, were you one of the guys that kind of was hoping for a son when you first started trying to have kids?
I think every dad, like, secretly wants a boy, right? So and it's funny too, and another reason I thought it would be really interesting to have you on is where you work at Stork Club. I thought was an interesting kind of caveat to talk about as well. But yeah, we can get into that in a second. But yeah, I was, love to have a boy, and then we had the girl, and I was like, okay, this is great too. Like, I'm not opposed to being a girl dad at all now.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I also did truthfully want a son before I started having kids. A lot of my friends, I'm like the last of my friends to have a kid, and a lot of them had girls, and they all really loved it. I know some of them hoped that their second and third kids were daughters, because they really loved having a daughter. And I think it's okay to, like, give yourself that, like, moment of not disappointment, but, like, if you were expecting one thing and it's something else, like, I think it's okay to acknowledge that. But it's been great, and it's hard to imagine, right? Like, okay, so then I wouldn't have my daughter, right? If I got a boy instead. So it's hard to imagine life without her. So I think it's okay to perhaps have a preference, but once you, like, have that kid in your arms, I think you're not really going to care.
Everything changes. Yeah, it all kind of goes out the window. And I mean, especially once they start getting their personalities and their little funny quirks, and especially, once they're mobile and talking and things like that. I mean, she melts my heart on a daily basis now. And I told my wife, because we always kind of agreed, like, 2 is it for us. And then our daughter came along, and I tell her this almost like weekly now. I'm like, man, she's such an angel that I would almost think about having a third now because of her, because of how amazing she's been. And I don't even know if I could fathom having 3 kids, but I mean, there's people that do it and they figure it out,
Dude, I can't fathom having 2. I mean, we're at that phase now where, like, she's so cute, and it's definitely a little bit of a trap, because we're over the hard phase, and she's so cute and, like, has a personality, but she's still, like, immobile. So it's not really that challenging yet. But I just remember early on having a newborn and thinking, like, if there was also a 2-year-old while I was taking care of this newborn, it would be so crazy. So if there was, like, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old and a newborn, I mean, obviously a lot of people do it, but hats off to those of you that have done it, because it seems tough.
Well, so that's a good segue then back into what I was going to mention earlier. So our son is 8, I mentioned that, and our daughter just turned 2. So we've quite the age gap there, and it was really unintentional. So we had 0 issues conceiving our first. And then for some reason, we just could not conceive our second. Wouldn't happen. No idea why. We just kind of had what they called unexplained infertility. And so we tried in vitro, we tried that several times, and then we finally were like, you know what, like, we were really, 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 really wanting a second kid. So we went ahead and did IVF, and I think we had like 1 egg that took. It was like our one and only shot, and it worked, and thank God, like, now we've got our daughter. But one of the topics I wanted to kind of talk with you about too, given where you work, is maybe just your thoughts, obviously not official opinions of any organization or anything, but it's something that I've noticed, especially if in my circle of friends and people that we hang out with at our age, and I think you're similar age to me. I'm 36. Are you younger than me, or?
I'm 36, yeah.
Oh, cool. There you go. Look at that. I've not noticed another generation that's had more issues with fertility than this generation. And I think almost everyone we know has had some struggle with it, or still is having some struggle with it. And it's kind of crazy, because there's no other generation before that we know of that has had this kind of issue. It just seemed out of nowhere, right? I don't know if you've got any experience or insight into that, given like where you work or not.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So it definitely is a thing. I think the most obvious answer is that a lot of us are having kids later in life, right? Like you said, we're both 36. I think our parents' generation was cranking them out in their early 20s. And
I just think true.
Your fertility does just go down both on the male and the female side. It's not just a female thing, but I think even as males, as you get older, we always talk about how you can have a kid your whole life, but it actually does go down a little bit. And a lot of fertility challenges are often on the male side as well. So it's not just like, a woman's age.
Yeah.
But that's a big factor. I also think that stress and anxiety is a thing that affects fertility. First of all, I do have people in my life who had fertility challenges and went through IVF. I also know multiple people in my life who struggled to get pregnant, scheduled the IVF session, and then the month before the IVF session, they conceived naturally.
Yeah.
Because there's like a psychological phenomenon where you sort of let go of worrying about it and trying so hard.
And then it happens.
Because okay, well, the doctor's going to do it for me. So then you just kind of do the thing, and then you can conceive. So I do think that we know like anxiety and stress is higher in our generations, right? I believe it's higher. So that's probably a factor as well.
Yeah. So I mean, back to like the stress and anxiety thing, I think it plays a huge role because I think, the stress and anxiety, it obviously changes hormones in your body. It changes endorphins in your body for males and for females. And I think it's such a delicate kind of system that I think a little bit of change in endorphins and in hormones and things like that can just throw an entire system out of whack.
Totally.
I think another thing too, and this might be a little bit more of like a tin hat kind of thing too, but I think a lot of it has to do with some of the foods and processed kind of garbage that we've ate as kids and grown up with. I think it has led to more of, these unforeseen issues that we will probably never be able to link it back to, the food and the processed chemicals and things in food. But these things didn't exist in previous generations in terms of that type of food and that type of diet. And now they do. And now this generation is having struggles with fertility and things like that. That's something that I've thought for a while. Obviously, there's no scientific backing to it or anything, but I do think it has something to do with it.
Yeah, that was going to be my third. I think that's the third point, is just change in like chemicals, and I'm not really a big like red dye guy, but I'm sure they talk about that kind of stuff too, like fluoride in the water. Like I think there are possibly contributing factors like that, and even just more realistically is the cell phones and the laptops, right? I mean, even though I'm 36, by the time I was like 16, I had a cell phone and a laptop, and so that laptop was on my lap a lot when I was a kid, and the cell phone was in the pocket. So I think that those things also are contributing factors as well.
Absolutely, man. I agree. So like changing topics here too. So back to like your podcast in terms of like your work-life balance. And so what kind of takeaways have you learned from some of the guests and the experts that you've had on your show? And how do you kind of approach your work-life, family, and personal kind of development life, given that you host this podcast? So I want to learn from you too. Our listeners want to learn how to kind of balance that and some takeaways and some things that they can kind of start doing to feel more human, because we've just started, getting into a really good regiment. We kind of finally realized, at least with working out, my wife and I, that the only time of day that we are going to actually make it work is if we do it before the kids get up. Trying to do it at the end of the day, trying to do it in the middle of the day, it's never going to work. So that was a kind of like a work-life balance thing that we have just in the last like 6 months have really implemented and been doing consistently on a week-over-week basis. But give me, like, if you've got any kind of like grand takeaways or anything that you've implemented in your own life, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, the first thing everyone always talks about is sleep. Actually, and everybody, a lot of the advice is like, sleep while you can. But I actually do think that's a great place to start, because if you're getting a decent night's sleep, then I feel like you can tackle a lot of the challenges of life and have the energy to work out and have the energy to do other things. Obviously, it's a little bit tricky with a newborn, but me and my wife did get into a rhythm pretty quickly of, even though she was breastfeeding, she would pump it, we'd have milk. And so we would take turns at night. So after the first couple of weeks, we were able to get out of that like real zombie phase. And so that helped everything. It helped morale. It helped our marriage, right? Like everything clicked a lot easier because we weren't sleeping hours a night, but we weren't just totally wrecked from days and days of no sleep. So try to figure out a rotation if you can, or try to figure out a way to just get some sleep. And then we did do sleep training when Val turned 6 months old, which I always heard about like sleep training.
Yeah.
You think maybe there's some actual like courses that the kids are going through. It's really just like let them cry until they kind of get used, like soothe themselves. But it works, you know. And she sleeps through the night, right? So she's sleeping 12 hours a night now, and she seems pretty happy during the day, and she seems to like us just fine. So I don't think we've done any long-term psychological damage yet, anyway. But that's really made a huge difference. So that's one. And then I think the other one is the actual communication between partners is really important. If you do have a partner in this, we were able to, since we both like to be active, we did a lot of like rotating and taking turns, right? So like, hey, like I'm going to go to the gym at this time if you can watch the kid for me, but then the next morning I'll watch the kid so you can go for a run. And so I think like working it out, or even if they don't like to exercise, like you could go get a pedicure, or like just giving them time to do things. Before my wife was able to work out again, I would just give her free time. So I think chipping in and finding ways that you can both benefit by helping each other out is a really big one as well. I think that it's good advice in general, right? Over communicating with your partner when possible. It becomes more important with the kid. And then, yeah, I think, like you said, the mornings are really key. So it depends on your work schedule too. I have the flexibility to work from home. And so I've been able to just like sneak in a workout during the day, depending on what's going on that day. So I think you have to also optimize for the lifestyle that you want to live. And if that means finding a job that has a little bit more flexibility and autonomy, then that might be something to consider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all funny points too, because I have so many interesting, like relatable stories, you know, like with our first, when Lincoln was born, trying to figure out like that balance of sleep and trying to figure out that balance of like me time versus, you know, giving my wife time away from the baby and then the sleep training. I mean, I can relate. I mean, it brings back so many memories. Our son was really great at sleeping. Our daughter didn't sleep through the night till she was 1. But, you know, we tried sleep training and it kind of like tears at your soul sometimes when you hear the kid just up there screaming and you're like, I don't know if she's going to stop. Like, this is brutal. But you gotta know that it's kind of best for everyone in the long run to get those kind of things done. And I remember when our son was born, we were fighting over who got to go pick up like the takeout food for the night, because you get to leave the house to go pick it up. That's not fair. It's just it's the same kind of stuff. But like having that open line of communication between your partner and your wife or your husband, I think this is a phenomenal suggestion. What about from your like work life balance? I know, because being in sales, I'm in sales operations for my day job, so we, year end, quarter end, when things get really crazy at work or when numbers aren't being hit, like everybody's kind of having to jump on the board or jump on the boat to kind of really get into, work mode. And working from home, we have a nanny here at the house. So my daughter's here all the time and I'm in my office working all the time. So that's a physical balance of walking out too many times for her to see me and running into my office and bothering me in a meeting and things like that. So how have you kind of adjusted your work life with your family life, especially with the new baby now?
Yeah. So I work in sales, and so that does come with its rewards, but also I guess you could say it's risks. Like I do have a little bit more autonomy over my schedule, but I also have a very clear goal and target. And so yeah, I can like spend more time with my daughter and go to the gym. But then at the end of the quarter or the year, there's a very clear metric for if I was successful or not. And my job is in jeopardy based on that. Right. So that's like the life I've chosen. And that does work for me. It was also tricky because again, like having this like autonomy, when I took off for paternity leave, I felt like the more I was off, the more I was just away from work. And then I had to come back and sort of like rebuild my pipeline. And just as generous as it was to have all this time off, it just kind of made me nervous about, okay, like when I get back to work, I'm going to have to hustle to hit certain numbers.
Yeah.
And that just kind of comes with the territory, but it's something that is to me worth it to then be able to have some of that flexibility. I also, we just started daycare last month. And then my mom actually comes in on Thursday. So I'm seeing both options. It's like, to your point, and it is actually very, very distracting to have the child and the caretaker in the house or in the apartment. We live in New York City, so I have a small apartment too. So I definitely hear it when there's something going on.
Yeah.
And so it's actually a little bit nicer. Like today she's at daycare and as painful as that is sometimes to drop this little baby off with a bunch of strangers, it is nice to just have the place to myself, and I can get a lot of work done and have one less thing to worry about. So I think it's really about prioritizing what's important to you and making time for it based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point too. So I manage our Instagram account, and a lot of the accounts that I interact with are, fitness and health and dad focused and things like that. And a lot of them have this kind of common theme of, and it might be, again, a little bit different for you because you've got the infant versus like a child like my son, where I'm teaching him like life skills and valuable lessons in sports and competition and things like that. But it's not selfish for you to focus on you. And a lot of young parents, especially, I think moms have an issue with this too, especially with like this guilt and the mom guilt and some of the postpartum issues that my wife even dealt with as well. But they feel guilty for not putting 100% of their attention on the kids 100% of the time. And it's actually not healthy to do that. It's healthier and unselfish to actually focus on you when you need to make sure that you're healthy and fit and getting enough sleep and eating correctly and getting enough time away from the baby and from the family and things like that, because that's what makes you a better parent. That's what makes you a better spouse when you come back and you're able to really kind of devote that full energy. But it's so easy to get burnt out in that kind of atmosphere, especially with the newborn.
Totally.
But that's something that I definitely see, and I try to make sure that at least my son, because he's of the age where he can start learning these lessons. And so by implementing, our fitness routine in the mornings, where he is, he's excited about it too, because we turned our garage into a CrossFit gym essentially. And so he'll come down in the mornings waking up for school, and he's like, "Did you guys work out today? Oh, cool. What did you guys do? Oh, awesome." And, having him see us do that and make it just part of our daily routine is healthy for him to learn that, like, okay, you got to take care of yourself. This is healthy. Mom and dad are out there, crushing their goals and getting after it. And that's something that to set him up for success later in life will be just kind of a normal thing for him, which is something that we really strive for. And it's kind of like a theme of our show as well. We want our listeners, we talk about raising strong, healthy kids, masculinity, being healthy, being fit, and all those kind of things. So that's a good kind of topic to lead into. And then that's why I thought this work-life, personal balance life kind of thing was such a good topic.
Yeah, I love this topic because have you heard of the book Hunt, Gather, Parent?
No.
Okay, it's actually just been sitting on my nightstand. I haven't read it yet, but I just interviewed somebody on my show yesterday who's like one of their big keys to success was one of the concepts from this book, Hunt, Gather, Parent, which is not living such a child-centric life. Yep. And so really to what you're saying, like the best thing you can do for your kid is have a life and be healthy and get a good night's sleep and do all the things you need to do to take care of yourself. Of course, you need to pay attention to them and be there for them. But I think that it's easy to get caught up in taking my daughter to like the swim class and this class and that class and listening to Barney all day. And I think that you can really lose yourself in that. And I think that it's good for the kids to not just see like what a normal life should be living like, and you can model healthy behaviors through the way that you do them and bring them along on some of those journeys. And it's better for all parties involved, I think.
100%. And I think it even helps to like healthier and happier marriages. It was something that I saw a while back that I talked about with my wife. And it was like, your kids are always going to be your kids, no matter what happens. You can obviously screw up a lot of shit with raising your kids and having some resentment issues later in life. And I plenty of people don't talk to their parents later in life kind of thing. But a marriage is only a marriage so long as it lasts and it works. And so it's like a double-edged kind of success, because if you work on your marriage and you work on taking time away from the kids as a couple or as individuals, it only makes your marriage healthier. And it's also a good thing for your kids to see as well, because they see a happy, healthy marriage. That's what's modeled to them. That's what they go out in life later looking for and expecting when they get married and wanting to work on and see how hard it is to work on and continue to make that good. And I think that it's both ways. I think it's a really good thing for people to work on themselves and as their couple. For the first time, I think in a couple of years, my wife and I took several trips this fall by ourselves, no kids. We left the kids at home. We went out to Denver for a trip with my brother and his wife, and then we took a trip out to Wyoming with some friends, and it was phenomenal. And our son was pissed that he didn't get to come because he really wanted to go. And he was like, you guys are going to see the Broncos and the Packers play? Like, what the hell? And I was like, sorry, dude, the world does not revolve around you, and you've got to understand that. And as much as he hated it, like, it was good for him to experience that. And I think those are really important lessons.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, and something I'd like to talk to you about as well, you know, being the dad bod brigade and whatnot. When you became a father, did you also feel like a little bit more of a drive to like be a provider and be a protector and to strive to be more successful?
Yeah, absolutely.
For your family?
1,000%. When I got out of the Army, I kind of fell back on what I knew before the Army, which was sales. So I went back into sales. When I got home from the Army, we came back up here to North Carolina, and I just wasn't, I mean, I took a pay cut to go back into sales from what I was making in the Army. And so I was like, man, I've got to do something to like increase my income. Like, obviously I can't just go demand a promotion at work, and I can only get so much in commission or whatever I was doing at the time. So I created my side business, my DJ company that I have now. And it was another thing that I had kind of done as a kid growing up. I did it through college. I was DJing and stuff in college, and my dad had his own company on the side when I was a kid. And so I was like, man, I've got to do something to increase like the amount of money I'm bringing in for this family. And so I did that, and it has been like a solid rock for us in terms of being able to help kind of provide for us when we needed to. And nowadays it's kind of like our fun money, where I DJ weddings on the weekends, and it's the money that we use to take family vacations or to buy, you know, a jersey at the game that we wouldn't have otherwise bought, but because, you know, it was too much money. But I'm like, you know what? I've got the fun money here. That's what this is for. But at the time, it was dire. It was needed. We needed that money to survive. And I think that was absolutely kind of the factor into doing that is I need to provide, and, you know, being the dad and the husband and all that, like, it was my duty to figure it out. And that was my solution to it.
Yeah, I feel like that just really kicks in at some point. Like even when you're just married, but not talking about having kids, there's some of that. But I think it's something more like instinctual when you actually have a child to provide for. It gets more real, especially if your wife's working. Like, my wife had a job; she was gainfully employed. I didn't really feel like I had to you know, feed her, take care of her anyway. But then when you have this little baby that's just totally relying on you, you just start to feel like, okay, like I can't just be messing around anymore. I have to really take this more seriously.
Yeah, 100%. And then it gets even like kind of triple folded more harder when they get older, because then it's like, all right, now it's life lessons. It's teaching them, you know, right and wrong. It's teaching them how to think. It's teaching them about the world and how unfair it is and how hard it's going to be, and that, you know, losing is going to happen 10 times more often than winning, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just, that's kind of taken a heavier burden on me now lately with our son, just because he's at that age. And so that's really, that was kind of where we started with this podcast. And this idea was because of, you know, I coach his hockey team, and I'm around 8-year-olds all the time. And so I see the same kind of mentality in all of these 8-year-olds. And I talk to the parents, they kind of all have the same views as we do. And I was like, man, like, we've got to start like talking about like these ideas about raising these kids to be strong and mature and masculine and all that. And I've mentioned it 100 times at this point, but that was more of a burden on me now, I think, than even like providing for the family back then when we were young and trying to figure our way out in the world has been. And so it's interesting how it changes as the kids get older and the family kind of grows with that.
One of the things I ask a lot of my guests is if they think a lot about the psychological impact that we have on our kids, or just the amount of impact we have on their psyche, because they're so impressionable in those first like 7-8 years, right? Like you could really mess it. I mean, everybody talks about their, you know, what their parents did wrong. Right? You could really mess it up in a lot of ways. And to me, it feels very daunting at times. And so it's something I'm always interested to hear what my guests have to say about that. And it's to your point, it's on all of their minds. And I think that one of the things it does go back to is that self-care. Like, I think somebody on my show said dysregulated parents raise dysregulated kids.
Yeah.
Which is kind of so much like just the concept of like hurt people, right? So it's like if you're not taking care of yourself, you're a lot more likely to snap at your kid when they're asking an innocuous question, or you're not more likely to be short with them or be annoyed with them, and that impact is you don't even realize sometimes what you say to them has an impact that it has. And so taking care of yourself also leads to you having a more understanding response to your kids and a more just like, I don't know, loving, empathetic vibe at times.
Yeah.
Is that something that also you think a lot about?
Oh, 100%. And I think my wife would tell you that I'm of the mentality of like very much like the stern kind of disciplinary figure, because, you know, that's what I was raised with. My dad laid the law down, and I had belts that we got spanked with. We had a wooden paddle we got spanked with. And obviously that's a little frowned on nowadays, but spanking is still a very effective way of getting your point across. And it's more so now as like a threat. And if we have to follow up on it, we do. But I mean, she's kind of like the yin and the yang to me, because she'll do much more of like the kind of empathy and loving kind of side of things. And I'm very much like the disciplinary figure, but I have to remind myself that I can't be that all the time, you know? And so it's a good balance, and it's a tough balance, because I kind of am of that mindset and she's not. And so we kind of work on it together, and we each have our roles. And sometimes I'll tell her like, look, I'm not going to be the bad guy today. I'm not going to be that disciplinary figure today. So you're going to have to discipline him if he steps out of line. And obviously there's a limit. Like if I hear him say some crazy thing back to his mom, I'm coming storming out of the room, and I'm like, what did you just say to your mom? But at the same time, like he needs to know that she is just as much going to discipline him as I will. And so it's a balance of when you show empathy, when you show love, when you show the hard kind of nosed discipline. And it's hard. And I probably mess it up a lot more than I would admit to. But I think that's, you know, why we work on it in marriages. And that's why, like you said earlier, the communication and just kind of keeping that line of communication open is incredibly helpful. Yeah,
I'm really interested to see how the disciplinary roles unfold in my own household as my daughter gets older.
Man, I'm very curious with my daughter, because she's got the world wrapped around everybody's finger, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to I'm not going to discipline her the same way. And so I'm trying to figure it out. I've got a lot of buddies who are girl dads, so I probably need to lean on them and be like, man, what are you doing with the daughters for discipline? Because I can do it with the son. I feel like that's pretty straightforward for me, but it's a whole nother realm with a daughter. I don't know. I feel like I'm in kind of over my head once she gets to that age.
Totally. Yeah, I know. I already know it's over for me. So
yeah,
I'll just accept it now.
That's what, and they catch on to it quickly, man. They know too. She's just. But the good thing is like our son's great with her. He loves being a big brother, even though, you know, he's much older. They get along great. He helps out with a lot of stuff. And so honestly, I think it was kind of perfect for us the way, you know, everything unfolded with the age gap and the timing on it all, because I couldn't have done like 2 under 2. That would have been like too much for me. I would not have been able to handle that. I'm very much of a toddler and beyond kind of phase, but having like the toddler and an infant would have been a lot. And I don't know how people do it. God bless them.
Yeah. Again, those of you out there that are doing it, I tip my hat to you guys. It seems tough.
Yeah. I mean, we know people that have like 3 under 3, and it's just, I don't even know how you can think, let alone get like, because like we have bedtime routines for one of them and a bedtime routine for the other, and a dinner routine for one and a dinner routine for the other. Like having 3 at the time, it's probably good because the kids learn to just be more easygoing and they just kind of go with the flow. And I have noticed a second child kind of dichotomy with our daughter, where she's way more easygoing than our son ever was. She just goes with the flow. She's just happy go lucky. And our son was like very regimented, very strict. Like if you change something, he would lose it as a toddler. And our daughter just doesn't care. She's fantastic.
Well, I mean, people used to have like 5 kids. You don't see that anymore, really. No. I mean, not in the circles I run in. I mean, all my friends stopped at 2.
Yeah,
I think one of them's got a third on the way, but it's just not as common. I feel like our parents' generation, it was a lot more common to be a family with 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah, my dad was one of 6, and that was like normal back then. I mean, they had 2, and then I was like, 2 is all I think I could handle.
And I bet his dad was the only one that worked and somehow fed eight mouths.
they certainly weren't putting them in daycare back then like we are, because good God, that's a freaking crime in and of itself.
Oh, dude, I live in Manhattan, so don't even get me started on daycare costs.
I don't want to know. Yeah. So we did daycare with our son, and it was a nightmare. He was sick every other week. He got hand, foot, and mouth, I think like 3 times. And he had it so bad, it would spike like a crazy fever, and it would go like stupid high, like 103.5, like 104. And he would have a seizure. So he'd have a febrile seizure every single time he got hand, foot, and mouth. And the kid rode to the hospital in an ambulance, I think twice, before we finally were like, all right, we know what this is right now. Like, he doesn't need to go to the hospital. But it was nuts. And that was all because of daycare and nasty kids sharing germs and putting shit in their mouths.
Yeah, my daughter's basically been congested since she started a month ago. So
yeah, so that was why.
Did you take him out, or did he just do daycare till it was school time?
He did. Yeah, he did. We put him in a preschool once he got a little bit older, and it was like smaller like class sizes, so it got a little bit better. But I mean, as a kid, all I remember him being was just sick constantly. So
is he like super immune system now? They say that's the thing.
He's gotten better. We have also kind of increased our kind of like health and fitness, and in terms of like supplements and things like that we have as a family. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has helped as well, because COVID wrecked him. Going to school with the stupid mask on, like, wrecked him. Mm-hmm. He got sick about a year straight. When he was in 1st and 2nd grade, he was sick all the time again. And so we got back on to like really good, healthy, like fitness and supplements and things like that. And this year, knock on wood, I think he's only been sick like twice. So I think it's helped. And I think he's finally starting to kind of get out of that, whatever happened with him during COVID, and catching every germ that ever existed afterwards.
Yeah.
But our daughter, she's great. We all had COVID. Like when she was 4 months old, she was like, not a big deal. Like she had like a fever. She wasn't even fussy, and she just plowed right through it. It was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. And that was another point too I wanted to make too. I saw a clip today, speaking of like, healthy lifestyle, that kind of thing. So there was a dad who was talking it was on a reel on Instagram, I think, and he had his kids outside like working out, and he had a lady come by like freaking out, like asking if the kids were okay, if they needed water, blah, blah, blah. And it was all to say that like this generation has become so lazy with the phones and the technologies and not being outside and things like that, that it's abnormal now for people to see kids outside playing and working out. And I thought that was interesting, maybe in talking with you today. Obviously with the infant, it's not quite the same, but for us with like the older kids and trying to get that kind of mindset out there, I thought it was really, really kind of interesting point to point out there. But I think it's also something as dads that we have to think about as they get older, like how we kind of build what is normal, what is right, what is wrong, what is healthy, and that kind of thing into them as they grow up.
Yeah, I mean, me and my wife are both very active. She's a big runner, and I've been doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for like 4 years now, so I've been really enjoying that. And think a lot about hopefully my daughter not necessarily wants to do the exact things we do, but just sees that it's fun, sees the value in it, and picks up something as well. I'd love for her to do something like jiu-jitsu for the self-defense aspect as well, because
absolutely,
again, I think becoming a girl dad, it's hard not to just worry about her when she's going to be out in the world. And so I like doing jiu-jitsu now because I feel like I can protect her better. I also would hope that she'd want to be able to protect herself. But
yeah, so how did you get into that? I've actually been thinking that's like the one thing, in the realm of what's popular nowadays I haven't jumped into is the jiu-jitsu thing yet. I've got a buddy that's really into it, and he got his boy into it, and like they are obsessed and they love it. So I coach hockey, I play hockey, my son plays hockey, but we've been interested in doing this with him. And so did you just kind of happen upon it, or was it something that you had done before? And
no, I think I did. I mean, to your point, it's kind of like in the zeitgeist now. I just had heard it a lot of times, and Joe Rogan talks about it, and I just kind of heard it around, and I just felt like it was something I wanted to try. I dabbled in some martial arts in the past, but there's something very addicting about it. To your point, like it does get very obsessive. I think it's just because it's like just so tactile, and like you're like really doing it. Like they basically, depending on where you go, you essentially get to like do the moves live. Like you get this kind of spar from day one.
Yeah.
And that's just very addicting to be able to actually see it happening in real time, as opposed to like if you do like karate, you're just sort of like punching wood blocks and whatnot. So it's very addicting. It's this great workout, and it does really feel like very empowering to, you when you spar with these people that have been doing it for a long time, they're just nothing you could do to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like how like fit you are, how tough you think you are. Like you're just like a rag doll to them. And they're smaller than you sometimes. Like it's nothing to do with size or strength. And so the idea of like, oh, I could learn this, I could get better at this is very addicting. And so it's definitely been harder to do since having a kid. I used to go like probably 5 days a week. Like I would go in the morning before work. But now, we have the morning routine with the baby, so I can't really do that as easily. So there's like a night class I can go to sometimes, or I go more on the weekends. Again, like kind of rotating back and forth with my wife. Like, hey, if I go to Jiu Jitsu today at 10, like after when I get back, you go for a run, or like that's been really helpful to do that trade off. Because now it's more like 2 or 3 days a week, but it's still like so important that I really prioritize it.
I know there's a lot of people that have their kids in it too, and that's why we've been interested in doing that. And I think the values that it teaches, like, overcoming obstacles and struggles and difficult things, and, putting energy and effort forth into something to get better at it, and kind of seeing how that progresses over time. I think those are always kind of really important values and lessons to teach kids at a young age as well. But I don't know. I'm sure the programming is different for, an 8-year-old going into jiu-jitsu versus you, like a grown-ass man going into it, right?
Yes. Well, yeah. Thank you for calling me a grown-ass man. I appreciate that. Yes, it is different. There's kids classes at most schools. Our school has a whole kids program, so definitely check out the local gyms. See if they have a kids program. It's. I think it's fairly similar. I think there's some certain moves that kids aren't allowed to do to their of a certain age. But I mean, I think it'd be a great thing to pick up at the same time as your kid. You guys could go to the same gym, and then you could obviously do some things together after class and stuff like that. So I'd highly encourage it. Plus, it'd be a great thing for us to talk about because I love talking about it. So I would definitely. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Even my wife's been asking me about it. She's like, "We need to find one. Like, I want to do it too." And I'm like, "I know, I would love to."
This is your sign, then.
It's just the wife's already bought in. We have to do it now, right?
Are you in Raleigh? Are you in the city?
We're north, so we're out in the country. Actually, we're in Wake Forest technically, but so it's like 30 minutes north of Raleigh. Okay,
yeah. I mean, obviously, it also helps like proximity. Like I could bike to my gym in like 10 minutes, so it's really helpful to have it close by.
Yeah.
So I think that helps too. But yeah, check out what's in your area and check out the schedule and try to find something.
That was why we created the CrossFit gym in the garage, because trying to get back into town to go to the CrossFit gym was either like a 5 a.m. thing, and it's like a 2 to 2.5 hour round trip, like door to door event every morning. And if I was like, I would have to wake up at like 4:30 a.m. and that was insane. And then the other side was doing it in the evenings after work. And then I'm interfering with dinner and kids and dinner routine and all that. So that's why we were like, let's just outfit the garage. We're going to do the gym. But we love it now because we get out there, we walk outside. I've got a mini split too, so it's heated, it's cooled. I've got everything you need out there. And we have one of our neighbors come over. We work out there every morning at 6 a.m. My wife comes out there with me. The kids are still sleeping. We've got the baby monitor out there, but we can blast some music. Nobody's getting woken up. And we kind of all get everything we need out of it, which is cool.
I mean, that's the move, because even with the gym being close, it's like a 2-hour investment, right? Like the commute there, the hour class, and the commute back and showering and whatnot. Like it's hard to just get a 2-hour chunk in a day.
Yeah.
Even when you're single, it's one thing, but it's hard to do with a kid.
Yeah, and we're fortunate enough too that I work remotely. My wife's got like a really kind of hybrid schedule too. Some days she's remote, some days she's not, but she really controls that. So yeah, if you were going into the office every morning at 8 a.m., that would be still pretty difficult to achieve. But we just have found that waking up at 5:30, working out at 6 every morning is kind of our sweet spot. And now it's become so routine. Like I had this saying where I want it to become like just brushing your teeth every morning. Like it's just expected. Every morning we get up, we do that. We don't make any excuses, and it just becomes part of our day. And that's where we're at with it right now. So we're pretty pumped.
The one thing about my health that's actually been easier since having a kid is the routine of it all. And so I'm not going out and partying, anymore. Like, so we're home, we go to bed early. And so I think it's helped to at least eat healthier and eat better. we're not, we're just not eating out that much. We go out to eat like maybe once a week, and every now and then we'll take our daughter out to the bar like on a Saturday afternoon and hang out with her there. But we're really doing, even though I talked about not having a child-centric life, like we're still like, I wake up when she wakes up, I take care of her in the morning. Like I put her to bed and then we have dinner together and then we go to bed too. It's not like we're doing like all these crazy, like single person activities. Yeah. And so the routine does help. So sometimes it's helpful to also just focus on that. Like, I can't work out like I used to, but like, what are some of the upsides of this? I think that psychologically helps you too.
Yeah. And I've even seen some really cool things lately online too. I found this guy on Instagram. He was super avid, like hiker and kind of outdoorsman before kids. And he was saying that like, just because you have kids doesn't mean you have to stop doing that. Like find a way to get them involved with it or bring them with you. So he had 2 boys, twins. They were probably like 1, maybe 1.5. And he had one in a back carrier and he'd carry the other one on his stinking shoulders. And then he'd go hiking. So not only was it was a workout for him, he had his kids out there and his boys out there with them in the woods, kind of hiking and having fun and enjoying kind of his hobbies at the same time. But he didn't have to give up what he was doing before kids by involving them. And so because he was a healthy, fit dude, he was able to do that. But I've seen it in a lot of other things with like biking or with just any kind of other activities, whether it's, maybe going to the gym with an infant might not be the best idea, but some of them have daycare facilities. Some of them, going for walks, going for bike rides, taking them somewhere, just involving them and just continuing about like your daily life as best as you can and just bringing your kids with you. My brother is a super avid, brewery enthusiast, and they go to breweries every weekend. They're about to have their second kid, and I imagine once they get over the shock of newborn phase, they'll be right back at the breweries with the baby, hanging out on a Saturday, like you just said.
Yeah, that's the move.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I think that'll be that. I think we kind of went over everything I wanted to talk with you about. I'm super interested to kind of just continue being a fan of your show and listening to it, and maybe if you want to have me on one day, we can reciprocate the love. But thanks for being here today, man. Do you have any social links or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, Successful Working Parents. Check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast. We have an Instagram account as well. We share clips and things like that. So yeah, check us out there.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for the knowledge. I think it's for the time. And you can follow us on Instagram at Dadbod Brigade and our website, www.dadbodbrigade.com. Thank you guys so much for joining, and thanks for listening. Anthony, thanks for coming, man. It's nice meeting you.
Thank you. This is fun.
Take care, guys. See ya.